new episode of the Men with the Golden Tongues. I am your host, Micah, joined by my co-host, Brad.
Hello.
And special guest, Jay.
Hello.
We're here to review the 21st James Bond film, 2006's Casino Royale.
Thank God.
We made it, guys.
I feel like Dante having gone through all 9 circles of hell, and now we've come out and it's paradise that we get to go
Well, for one movie before it
through.
We had a speed bump,
yeah.
Right.
and then we go down on the roller coaster,
And then we're
and
back.
then the ride stops, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
So this movie is directed by Martin Campbell, starring brand new James Bond actor Daniel Craig and Eva Green as the Bond girl and Mads Mikkelsen. Let's start off by just briefly talking about, just giving a brief overview of our thoughts of this movie and what we expected out of it, because this movie is very, very different from the other James Bond movies. This movie came out in the mid-2000s, and in the mid-2000s, for you young folks out there, the mid-2000s and mid-2000s were full of angst because everyone was pissed off that the 90s happened. Mm-hmm. So everything was like gritty and hyper-realistic, which is very counterintuitive to what this film series is known for. There's not a lot of gadgets in this movie, and there's not a lot of like wackiness. This is straight up like spy thriller.
Well, this movie, or rather this book, was chosen specifically because this was the first James Bond novel. The Broccoli's never had the rights to this film until the mid-2000s, because this Casino Royale was actually optioned as a 1950s, late 50s TV movie that was made called Casino Royale, which is actually technically the first James Bond film.
Is that are you referring to the 67 Spy Comic?
No, that came later. There was actually a black and white 50s TV movie.
Oh, okay.
That was the first technically James Bond film, and so CBS had the rights to Casino Royale. Got kicked around to a few other folks. Finally, the Broccoli's got it back in 2000, and they decided after Die Another Day they had hit kind of a nadir with where they were for Bond, and they needed to go and do something different. And they remembered that Cubby Broccoli had always told his kids, like, whenever you get stuck, go back to Fleming. And so they decided to go all the way back to the original Bond.
Took it very literally.
And for those who also don't remember, Batman Begins came out a year before this.
Yeah, 2005.
And that kind of showed that doing like these origin stories for these established characters could do really well. Obviously, the development for this movie was probably predated Batman coming out, I would imagine. But I find hard to believe they didn't take some inspiration from Batman Begins when crafting this film, essentially.
It's obvious.
This is the James Bond origin story, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's also a reboot of the franchise, because now Casino Royale is a hard stop. Nothing that happened before matters, and we're starting fresh again.
Yeah.
For me, this is very. I mean, you mentioning Batman Begins, like, to me, this is the Batman Begins of this franchise. But yeah, like, you can feel the inspiration, sort of. I mean, obviously, yeah, pre-production and all that being relative. It's darker, it's grittier. Bond is. I even hate to say that he's James Bond up until the very end, which I think is the point, right? Mm-hmm. Even though, he does these like James Bond things, plays poker and all this other shit, but he doesn't feel like James Bond until the very end, like him as a character, not as the movie. But it works because in 2006, you did have a lot of the angst, and like people wanted this sort of darker view of the world. I mean, there's a lot of theories of like superhero movies and that sort of thing having such a boom at this time because the rest of the world is crazy. So people were like, "Oh, I want a hero," that type of idea. And this fits right alongside that. It's more serious. It's got a couple of like moments where I was like, I got it. Like, that's a funny line. But for the most part, he's just a badass. Like, he's just a tough badass. And this, to me, like, there are different types of James Bonds. There is, like Pierce Brosnan was like the ultra slick James Bond with only one good movie. Then you've got Roger Moore, who's kind of like goofball Bond, and then that sort of thing. And Sean Connery is like the OG Bond, so he kind of set the precedent. And he's more, I think, kind of more in line with the books, from my understanding.
Well, and this movie is definitely the most true to the source material than any of the other Bond movies that were based off of novels by far.
Okay. Well, but to me, Daniel Craig is Thug Bond. Like,
Bro, no, and
they
yes.
show, and they literally, he is a tank of a character, and they show that in the beginning action sequence.
Oh yeah,
which is just hilarious.
Like I said, a 2-second scene juxtaposed against another character shows you everything you need to know.
Right, and I know exactly what you're talking
in
about.
2 seconds.
And to me, when I saw this in theaters, I was like, okay, like, because I started out with GoldenEye, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always, in my mind, it was like slick, cool Bond. No. He's smashing people's heads against urinals and shit in the first like 2 minutes of the movie. You're like, wow, okay. Well, and it worked.
Well, and the other thing cool that's I think is really cool about his character in this film specifically, he's in during this entire movie, he is like super arrogant and super smug, and he's an asshole. And he's actually like the biggest thing his character develops over the course of the film that makes him Bond at the end is that humility because of everything that happens in the film. So
yeah, because he's broken down completely by the end.
It's like training a puppy. You know what I mean? Like a fucking dog is just he's like a puppy dog, right? He's all over the place. He's fucking whatever.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he humps whatever comes into his purview.
And the character really grows at the end. There was a little bit of controversy when Daniel Craig was announced.
I was going to bring that up because this was also for you and I especially because we like Brosnan was already there when you and I got into the series. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time that we got like the media frenzy around a new Bond and react to that. And yeah, I distinctly remember the controversy surrounding like the media hated the pick. Like I remember like they derided him because when they revealed him, he still had blonde hair. So they're like, oh, the blonde Bond.
James
like,
Blonde?
James Blonde. Right. Yeah, blonde hair.
I'm a wacky headline writer.
And you two probably
is that
know.
like the New York Post?
No, it's probably from the Sun. I would imagine, so.
Right. Fair enough.
And then you guys probably know the movie that they saw that kind of led to them really wanting Daniel Craig for the role, besides his audition, of course.
Oh, what was the name?
Layer Cake.
Yeah, like that was the movie they saw. They're like, oh, this guy could be absolutely perfect for what we want to do because that movie had a lot of those same tendencies, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a scumbag piece of shit in that movie too.
But yeah, I like Daniel Craig as James Bond.
Does the hair bother you? Does it still bother you?
No, of course not.
There are people I know who legitimately did not see Casino Royale because of that.
And that's how I know we'll never see a non-white James Bond.
See, I disagree because
I disagree with you too. Actually.
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
right. Because I think that he proved if you go outside of what this is, what Bond is, people will actually like it if the movies are good. And look, people are just like, yeah, no, I'm definitely not going to see this blonde Bond. Oh, is there a new James Bond movie? They are dying to get Daniel Craig to come back for these movies.
But at the same time, it's just hair.
I mean, bleaching is a thing. You can't do that. That's controversial.
But like we talked about that before. How like race is important for certain like well-known characters. Like Captain America has to be white because that's what Captain America is. Yeah. James Bond's whiteness has never entered into the equation except for Live and Let Die. That's the only time where his whiteness was referenced.
Hey, there's a white guy over there.
but other than that, really like the fact that he's white has zero bearing on his character. I could easily see a black Bond or another minority.
I agree with you, but I don't have a lot of
faith people will flip the fuck out about it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it could certainly happen.
All right, let's get into the movie.
Also, is he going to sleep with that many white women? Like, if it's black James Bond?
Right. And,
like, is Idris Elba going to have sex with this myriad of white women?
Right.
Look, I'm here for this movie.
And then it would just be called the Wilt Chamberlain story.
Yeah. I would also watch that movie.
Or if there are a bunch of black women, then why don't you just call it Action Jackson at that point?
Again, I will see this movie. I will watch this.
The movie opens in black and white.
Were you freaked out in the theater?
I was like, what the hell is going on here?
I was a little miffed.
Guys, it's
I'm
broken.
Like, I was a little... at first, it's funny you say that, because I, for a second, thought I was like, something wrong with the projector? I was like, why is this in black and white? I was also really miffed that there was no gun barrel. I was aghast that there was no gun barrel at the beginning. I would be fine with why there was no gun barrel later. But when I distinctly remember thinking, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I guess you're rebooting James Bond. You gotta have the gun barrel. Like, what are you doing?
Brad, I just imagine Brad just being so
silently raging in the theater.
Yeah, it's like, did I enter the wrong movie? Well, he just said M, so yeah, I guess I am in the right movie.
Is this movie all in black and white? Is it? Because I have to imagine a lot of people were probably like, is this movie all going to be
what the
black
fuck's going on?
Although, by the way, I think that would have been a cool choice. I actually
would
think
have been an interesting choice.
I like, you know why I think it would have been a cool choice if they had gone all black and white? Because if you're going back to the first book, taking the franchise all the way back, fuck it, do the first movie in black and white. I think it'd been clever. I mean, would it have changed how cool the movie was?
I think if it was set in the 50s, you could probably get away with that. I don't think you could do that in the movie set in the mid-2000s.
Nah, fuck it.
Yeah, I don't think watching a bunch of guys play poker in black and white would work. It just doesn't.
The bleeding eye thing would probably not work as well.
Yeah.
Like,
he's just crying.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Why is everyone making a big deal about this?
It opens in Prague, Czech Republic. Bond has tracked down the MI6 section chief Dryden, who was selling secrets for profit. They have a very, very interesting back and forth, which is intercut with. So this is all about Bond has been sent to take this guy out, and this section Dryden, he's like, you got to be a 00 to take me out. M would never send a single
regular
O.
agent.
Yeah.
Single O.
You got to be a 00, and it is intercut with. And in order to be a 00, you need 2 registered kills, which I gotta believe that's kind of lax for a super secret agent, right?
Well, I think it's just 1 per O. Is that how?
I guess so.
Yeah, you're done. But also, shouldn't there be more to it? Like, you just gotta kill 2 guys? Bam, bam. All right, can I get my card? Well, that seems, because isn't the whole idea that, and you guys know this part,
I would imagine
isn't the 00 status? Isn't that the license to kill?
Yeah.
How is killing people get you the license to kill?
Well, you got to know how to drive before you get your driver's license.
I would imagine that.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I would imagine that
you're right.
They're only giving this to the elite agents, and so like this is the mission they send them on. Like, all right, go prove that you can go do this job. Yeah, essentially. We'll give you your license to kill permit, basically.
Yeah,
until you get your full license.
But you can't kill people like after 9, and you can't have more than
Right.
one killer in the car with you at the same time.
This gun has
permit to kill.
Student gunman written on the side of it.
Replica 50 caliber.
So the scene is very cool because they're having this tit for tat, this back and forth, and it is intercut with Bond making his first kill. It's pretty savage too. It's a bathroom beating,
right? Well, and that just goes to show you,
he's a thug.
This movie is going to be different than all the rest.
Yeah, man.
I mean, like I said, there are characters in this movie that you would never see in any previous Bond. There are scenes in this movie that you would never see in any previous Bond film. Like, and this is just a great example of this, like, brutal, gritty. And I have to mention also, because you see it right off the bat, the cinematography in this movie is fantastic. Like they do a great job using the camera and using the film techniques to underlie like what you're supposed to be feeling in the scene.
Yeah. Dryden points a gun at Bond, and right, nothing happens, and Bond's just like, I got your ammo, dick. And then the guy's like, this scene is so excellent, and it sets a tone.
You know what it reminds me of? This scene reminds me of the scene in Dr. No when he kills Professor Dent. Yeah, because he's completely cold, he's completely unfeeling. Because like when Dryden realizes that he's gonna die, like he's like, okay, this guy's making his bones, he's gonna be a 00. He wants to have this like dramatic like last word. He's like because he's like takes 2 kills and then he knows he killed his associate. He's like, well, the second kill is gonna be, and then Bond just pulls up and shoots him. He's like, yes, considerably.
He's such an asshole. Dude.
I mean, like it sets the tone for the entire rest of his run, right? Yeah. Like this is who we're dealing with now, and it's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah. No, I mean he literally You're right. The guy is like, oh, let's have this existential conversation. Nah, son, I don't think so. I ain't got time for all that.
I got time for that shit.
Yeah. And he doesn't even, like, they don't even do, like, this spy movie slick guy thing where he shoots him with this gun with a silencer and the guy just kind of slumps over. He shoots him out of the chair. You know, it's like they got to go just a little step further, which I loved. It was great. And then they juxtapose that with him then turning around and shooting the guy in the bathroom to the credit.
Right.
Which is smart.
Which was it was a very clever way to get the gun
man,
barrel
like
scene.
I said, I was like, whoa! I thought this
for
was
it, man.
amazing.
I popped for it. It was great. I thought it was fucking great. I was like, this is awesome. This is fucking awesome.
They
And the first bit of color that you see in the movie is the blood coming
Yeah,
out of the
man.
gun barrel. It's
Oh
fantastic.
my God.
You're like, this is the right movie. It's not in black and white.
If you take life, do you know what you give? Odds are you won't like what it is. When the storm arrives, would you be seen with me? By the merciless eyes I've deceived. I've seen angels fall from blinding heights, but you yourself are nothing so divine. Just next in line, own yourself because no one else here will save you. They else will betray you, and they will replace you. You can't deny the prize, it may never fulfill you. It longs to kill you. Are you willing to die? The coldest blood runs through my veins. You know my name. If you come inside, things will not be the same. When you return tonight, if you think you won, you never saw me change. The game that we have been playing, I've seen this diamond cut through heart of man. Then you yourself, but if you must pretend, you may need to run. Arm yourself because no one else here will save you. Love will betray you, and I will replace you. You can't deny the prize, it may never fulfill you. It longs to kill you. Are you ready to die? The coldest blood runs through my veins. You know my name. 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 You know my
This is fucking awesome. Then we get to the opening title scene. Now, I will tell you guys right now, of the modern era James Bond films from 80s on up, this is my favorite song.
That's really interesting.
And this is my favorite. Oh, okay. This is my favorite combination of song and
That's still
visuals.
really interesting.
I absolutely love it. I
I was
love
going to
the
say,
fact-
this is Chris Cornell.
yeah.
I like this song too. It's really good.
You know what? And
I
you know what's
actually
funny?
totally
Like,
dig it.
so like I'm a huge like Audio Slave fan. Like I like Soundgarden. I like this
Wait,
song.
whoa. You're a big Audio Slave fan?
I like Audio Slave better than Soundgarden. I'm not even gonna lie.
Okay, you know what? Let's just move on.
All right, fair enough.
I don't hate Audio
I
Slave,
like the
but-
song better in the movie than I do outside of the movie. if that makes sense. It works well
Yeah.
for the film. It's not a great song in general.
The first time I've heard this song, and this song was not done for the movie.
It was done for the movie.
Oh, it was?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought
David Arnold wrote it. He actually wrote the lyrics and everything for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Didn't you listen to the lyrics? Like the lyrics are like spot on.
For
as
some
far as
reason,
listening
for
to film.
some
This
reason,
truly
I thought
is a casino royale.
for some
That's what Micah needed.
for some reason I thought I read somewhere that this wasn't done for it, and I'm like, wow, this is
No, it absolutely-
they hit the nail on that.
No, it
head.
absolutely was
I'm
done
driving
for it.
my Austin Martin. Oh, you're in the road. I better turn off. Like, wow, Chris Cornell's a genius. I like to think that all the Bond movies are just all the songs are exactly what's happening in them, to the scene.
Look, the visuals here are unique. They are different.
This is also the first time that, not the first time, but this is where you start seeing the run of Bond films where you start, if you know what to look for, there are massive spoilers in the title sequence.
Yeah.
The most notable one here is when they have a Queen of Spades on the screen, and when the crosshair goes over the face, you see Vesper Lynd's face, and you're not meant to think anything of it at the time, but the Queen of Spades or the Queen of Swords in the tarot is actually like a two-faced figure, so it like I said, leads very well into spoiling events for later in the film.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I literally just finished watching this, and I was like, totally missed that. Yeah, but this opening sequence is very cool. I like when they have two characters, obviously James Bond and someone else fighting. Like he punches the other character, and you see like the diamonds or something like that, or the spades. That's just cool. Or the guy getting murdered with a diamond in his chest and he falls over. I thought that was cool. Those are neat.
Yeah, I absolutely dig it, man. We cut to Uganda, where a terrorist group is meeting up with Lashif. Lashif is a private banker to terrorist groups around the world. The broker for the deal is a guy named Mr. White. Somebody else was Mr. Black on another job, so he got to be Mr. White.
Sweet.
White?
His name makes sense. We would find out how much his name actually makes sense many movies from now, but for now he's just Mr. White.
And I really want to. I can't wait to do that with Terrence is going to be on that episode just to shit on it, but I really want to have like a serious conversation with you. But it's a couple months, we'll get there.
I haven't watched Spectre yet.
You probably should.
Yeah, no, I'm going to. I just realized it's on Amazon Prime.
So Mr. White invests money and manipulates stocks so that they can get 100% return on their investment.
You mean Lashif?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Lashif actually short stocks, and this is kind of it's hilarious because
Ripped from the headlines.
Well, no, not even, because this movie was 2 years before the housing crisis, and and when you watch the film, I had no fucking clue what the fuck Lashif was doing, and then I remember watching it after I learned a little bit more about like the housing market shortage, and I was like, oh, that's
Lashif,
what he's doing. I was like, I see.
I didn't even know what shorting stocks were.
Right,
at all. I didn't know what
exactly.
that meant.
I like to think that
Still don't understand.
I like to think that people were like, huh, this James Bond thing, I think I got an idea.
Right.
It seemed to have worked for Mads Mikkelsen.
Well, it didn't work for Mads Mikkelsen,
Right.
because he was thwarted at every turn, basically. Yeah. But yeah, essentially, Lashif is taking money from, in this case, a war criminal, but then he's turning around, like he's holding that money. He's like a private banker, and the war criminal's putting it in holding. But Lashif is taking that money, using it to buy stocks, and then the process of shorting stocks has you selling that stock onto somebody, and then when the stock fails,
you make money.
You buy it back at a much cheaper price, basically. So when you're shorting stocks, you want the stock to fail. But the problem is, if the stock doesn't fail, then you just spent a shitload of money and you lost a lot of money because the stock is depreciated and you were kind of fucked. So.
And then they will come for you in a hotel room.
Yes,
in the middle of a card game.
They is a man by the name of Obano. He is an African warlord who's given his money to Lashif and was like, all right, you better
make it work.
Yeah, you better do something.
I have to say, the British viewpoint of indigenous people in this movie or Africans in this specific scene are really fucked up. Like, they are. You notice it more when they go to Nassau. There is a particular scene I was like, yo, how is this in a movie in 2006? We'll get to it. But, like...
Oh, I think I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just like, really? This was... okay. But, yeah, it was just... It's really weird. Like, I can't help but to see this weird lens just in how they see... How they sort of paint... what are these Ugandans at this point? So it's
well, actually, no. So the next scene, we're in Madagascar now. Apparently, so
yeah. Apparently, I think they all look alike. So how good of a person am I? So I will take that.
So we're in Madagascar. Bond is working with another agent named Carter, monitoring a terrorist, Malacca.
Can we just call him Sebastian Foucan?
We can call him Sebastian Foucan.
Like that's how I know him.
That's his name. And Sebastian Foucan, he is considered one of the founders of parkour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like him and a white dude, right?
Yeah. So the fact that he's in this movie, like, if you're a dumb American, you don't know who that guy is. Well, he doesn't make Assassin's Creed. Like, no, they got that from a real guy. Which makes this chase scene pretty goddamn epic.
This is my favorite.
It's a great. This was supposed to be the introduction to the movie. By the way, this is supposed to be like a pre-credit sequence.
Yeah, it feels like a pre-credit sequence, a long pre-credit sequence.
Like I said, I'm glad they went with the option they went with because, like I said, I like going back to the 5-minute credit sequence instead of the 20-minute credit sequence.
Right. So Bond's partner is like, what? Huh?
Right, like he's a fucking rube. And of course, brand new 00 James Bond is like fucking Johnny on the spot, professional in the field. Like, get your hand out of your ear, you fucking rube.
I'm sorry. I can't hear him. As a spy, I'm not able to find him. Dude.
So Sebastian, he makes him, and he starts running.
He bolts,
and he Usain bolts, and he.
That seems racist. But go ahead.
And we get a pretty fun action scene, something that was brand new, I think, in film in 2006.
Oh, this is parkour is like the new thing.
Yeah,
it is absolutely the new thing,
and it is an amazing scene. You know, they're running through a construction site, and you see Sebastian. He's doing this shit, and I don't know if it's because I know who that guy is, but like he's doing it and it's effortless, right? And then James Bond, in certain scenes, he's like, "Oh yeah, I could do this," and then when put to practice, like running up that crane, he's like,
"Yeah, dude."
He's fucking hoofing it, man.
So he looks very tired. Like, he is not gonna make that crane. It was almost as if that crane there was an escalator. Like, he was just like, shit. Oh.
So I have to say, I was so happy watching this scene and watching this entire movie because, of course, one of my major gripes with especially Die Another Day was that they turned to CG for the majority of the stunts, and we're finally back to practical stunts, practical effects again. They actually had those guys 140 feet in the air on that crane fighting.
No. Hey, we have an idea for you, Jay. I'm good. Like, CGI this shit. I'll pay the extra money.
And you could tell it's practical, and it looks amazing. This film is pretty damn great. Eventually, they get to the embassy.
We're gonna skip the
we
like you
cannot.
said, that hilarious that one hilarious bit when they're running through the unfinished hotel.
Oh, go ahead.
And Sebastian Foucan, like, so he jumps through this, like, what would you call that type? I don't know
It's
what
like
type of window
like
it is.
above a door they have like another piece of glass that can like open.
Right.
Basically.
So he jumps through this small, like, very narrow opening, and then 2 seconds later, crashing through the drywall, James Bond, like the Hulk, basically.
But that was
Right,
the scene
that
exactly
is
I was
the
talking
scene,
about.
yep.
Like, he is like, I like that they juxtapose like the finesse of this guy with the
that's
tank. Like,
that's
attitude.
the most obvious one. Like, you also have when James Bond, like when Sebastian Foucan jumps off the crane, like he lands very gracefully, he rolls. James Bond jumps off, he falls into like an AC unit, basically. like gets
Out of my way. Yeah,
and
smashes down.
picks himself up basically. Like you have the scene where like Sebastian Fugon's jumping from girder to girder, like jumping up the thing. James Bond's like, "Here's a wench." Bam, and just like rides
he
the
just
elevator to
jumps
the
down,
top basically.
Just hits it. It's like big rock. Yeah, he's a fucking caveman. But that's what's so good about this scene is they play it perfectly because I'm sorry, James Bond is not going to be able to keep up with this guy.
Yeah.
So you just got and he's not faster than him. You just got to use his. He's a big dude. Just use your brutish fucking giant self to just knock shit down. Look at this fucking scene. Like just go straight through. I love that shit. It's so funny.
I find it very difficult to imagine the other actors in their prime in this scene.
Well, like and that's what I said. This is such a different Bond movie. I will point out all the scenes that just like that could never be in a previous Bond film. Yeah. That could never be in it. Like
Roger Moore's running around.
No, definitely.
No, Roger Moore's like, give me a sniper rifle.
Well, because and the thing is, like Bond in the previous movies, Bond always, no matter what happens, no matter what he goes through, Bond always comes out looking like James Bond. Yeah, in this movie, they're not afraid to cut him up, to bruise him, to make him dirt. Like they let him get run through the ringer, and that's one of the things that makes it feel so different.
Oh, they kicked the shit out of him in this movie, like a lot. This is basically Tomb Raider the movie, right? You know, just torture your main character all the way through until the end, and you're like, you're fine now. Like, all right, cool.
Eventually, Sebastian Foucan runs to his embassy as if he's playing a game of tag, and he's just hit the base.
Yeah, well, that's how embassies actually work.
I mean, that's how they're supposed to work.
Right.
Unless you're James Bond, apparently, who just charges into the fucking embassy.
He runs into the embassy and starts shooting the place up. God damn! Like you don't respect anything, do you?
Fuck international rules.
like he takes like the, I guess I don't know what position that one guy in the shirt and tie would have held, but he pulls out a gun to try and shoot Bond. Bond takes from him and pistol whips him in the forehead, basically.
Well, and then slams his head on the bust of, I assume, the president of Madagascar or whatever embassy he's in.
But yeah, he drags Sebastian Foucan through the embassy, trying to escape with him, basically.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is this scene with Foucan. It goes from a stealth mission to an all-out chase mission to then a companion mission, like
an escort
mission, and then just like explosion. Like it does kind of go through all these like video game tropes. It's kind of funny to me.
And look, none of it is James Bond's fault because Carter was fucking touching his ear.
Yeah, he tried to make it a stealth mission, and then they were like stealth off, and he was like, "All right, let's do this."
Eventually, James Bond is cornered. A bunch of guards surround him, and he's got Sebastian Foucan, and the ambassador comes out. And the ambassador's like, "Give me back my man," or whatever, right? And
I think you broke my nose.
And James Bond is like, "Oh, you want him back? All right, here." He pushes him into the guy and then fucking shoots the place up.
Yeah. He kills Sebastian Foucan and then shoots a gas tank that's behind everybody and causes a massive explosion.
I mean,
that allows him to escape.
How else you got to make your escape, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't have any smoke bombs or whatever. Right? You need something. Then we see a scene of James Bond grabbed the guy's backpack and he's going through the backpack and he finds a MacGuffin in the form of a Sony Ericsson. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's another thing about this era of James Bond movies is that. We have a joke about this movie is brought to you by, well, all these movies are going to be brought to you by
Sony Ericsson. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, just Sony products in general, because at the end he's got like a Sony Vaio.
They're using Vaios.
I mean, apparently Ericssons are much more widely used in Europe than they are over here.
Really?
Yeah, that's probably why that they use them more in these films. So,
do they use Vaios over there too?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. So.
As a person in the industry, nobody does.
Yeah. James Bond films and Spider-Man films are the only places where people use Vaios.
And Bing. Like, hold on, I've got to Bing this on my Sony Vaio. Oh, do you? Okay, Spider-Man.
So on the phone, he sees the word ellipsis. So Bond keeps the phone. We get a quick scene of Lashif. I can't remember what this scene was. I think this scene is basically to establish that Lashif is very good at poker.
Yeah, it's to show he's kind of
it's to show he's very good at poker, and to eventually give Demetrios a reason to go visit Lashif, which helps advance other parts of the plot as well, basically. But yeah, so you're meant to see, and again, this is pulled straight from the novel, that Lashif is a mathematical genius. Like, he's sitting there at the table playing poker with other people, and he basically like lays his cards down. He's like, "This is my hand." He's like, you only have a 23% chance.
You got
of
a
beating
33 and a third chance. I'm beating this hand.
So that means I have an 8% chance. So to encourage someone to fold, we also get to see one of Lashif's villain gimmicks, basically, where he weeps blood.
Yeah.
I like his line where like he starts blotting it away, and like the people he's playing with look kind of freaked out. He's like, it's just a dereliction of the tear. He's like, nothing sinister. It's a good line. It's a good line.
At MI6, M is pissed off that James Bond, all this shit was caught on tape, because how couldn't it have been caught on tape?
Of
right?
course.
You blew up.
Well, I mean, they did make it a point to show all the video cameras throughout the embassy, like in very clear day. So.
like
Later on, Bond sneaks into M's home and hacks her top secret security level computer, so that he could trace.
it's probably a Sony bio.
So he could trace where the cell phone call originated from.
You've got a bloody cheek.
Sorry. I'll shoot the camera first next time.
Or yourself. You stormed into an embassy. You violated the only absolutely inviolate rule of international relationships. And why? So you could kill a nobody. We wanted to question him, not to kill him. For God's sake, you're supposed to display some kind of judgment.
I did. I thought that one less bomb maker in the world would be a good thing.
Exactly. One bomb maker. We're trying to find out how an entire network of terrorist groups is financed, and you give us one bomb maker. Hardly the big picture, wouldn't you say? The man isn't even a true believer. He's a gun for hire. And thanks to your overdeveloped trigger finger, we have no idea who hired him or why. And how the hell did you find out where I lived?
Same way I found out your name. I thought M was a randomly assigned letter. I had no idea it stood for...
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed. I knew it was too early to promote you.
Well, I understand double O's have a very short life expectancy. So your mistake will be short-lived.
Bond, this may be too much for a blunt instrument to understand. But arrogance and self-awareness seldom go hand in hand.
So you want me to be half monk, half hitman?
Any thug can kill. I want you to take your ego out of the equation and to judge the situation dispassionately. I have to know I can trust you and that you know who to trust. And since I don't know that, I need you out of my sight. Go and stick your head in the sand somewhere and think about your future. Because these bastards want your head. And I'm seriously considering feeding you to them. And Bond, don't ever break into my house again.
Mom?
This is...
I don't mind the fact that I don't mind the fact in this movie that he is like a computer genius, apparently. I do mind the fact that he looks completely computer inept 2 films from now.
Thank you. I was about to say the same thing. I was about to say the same thing. Like, he's like, oh, okay, I can just hack into I can break into my boss's house, and 2, I can hack anything. And then, now that we have a queue, I don't know shit anymore.
That's exactly what happens in Skyfall.
Confused.
This scene is also funny because M, they have a nice little banter between and M is James Bond is like, I always thought that M was a randomly assigned letter. I didn't know it stood for. And she was just like, you shut your fucking mouth.
What did she say?
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I'll have you killed. I was like, Jesus. Judi Dench is so fucking good, dude. She's my favorite. She is my absolute favorite.
And she's really cool because, like I said, later in the film, like she has a very human reaction, like when he's in the Bahamas and he's still remotely accessing her computer. She's like, "How does he know these things?" Like, it doesn't make any sense.
We're all asking. We're all Judi Dench in this scene. We're all M. Does he know?
Eventually, she tells him to go on a brief vacation until she can decide what to do with him. Because
yes, but this isn't like Emma's told Bond to go on a vacation before, but it's always been in the method of going on a vacation. Like this, like she's
Go
like,
sleep
get the
with
fuck
random
outta
women
here.
and get drunk. Like, all right.
Yeah, go do what I want you to do without me having to tell you to do it.
She's remote. She's literally like, get the fuck out of my face. Right now.
This M is not Bernard Lee.
No, definitely not.
There is no winking and like, go ahead, son.
Well,
no.
What's funny is when she first sees him in her apartment, she goes. I forget the exact line, but it's something.
You've got a bloody cheek, she says.
Yeah, but no, there's a part where it's like, yeah, next time instead of killing a nobody, why don't you just kill yourself? I was like, God damn, like, lady, like, I thought we were friends. Like, she is like, I don't feel like it's an overcompensation. I think it's a perfect balance. She is absolutely brutal to him in talking just so that she's not seen as weak.
Well, she's also trying to break him in, basically. Like, remember, he's still a brand new agent at this point in his timeline. So
yeah, but yeah, I just thought that was funny. Next time, shoot yourself. I was like,
yeah,
okay, I thought you were my boss. Yeah.
So James Bond goes to the Bahamas,
driving a Ford sedan.
Yo, there is nothing funnier than this scene. It's like he gets off the plane, he's got the suit on, he looks like a badass, and it's like, and he's like, in a fucking Ford. You're like, like this isn't as cool. This is the American version. Like, oh man.
Maybe Fords are a luxury car in the Bahamas.
Oh yeah, in the Bahamas. Maybe.
I've been to the Bahamas. No, it's
not so much. Okay.
Like a classic black dude. This guy ends up in Nassau.
Well, Ian Fleming loved the Bahamas, man. Like, he loved the Caribbean.
Yeah, that's true. Because he's had several movies.
Yeah. So a funny little gag here. James Bond is wearing his Donald Trump golf gear. And consisting of white shirt and khaki pants.
Hey, he looks like a badass though.
And he's tying his shoe, and some fucking asshole is like, "Hey, what I gotta wait here all day, or you gonna park this?" So he throws the keys to him, thinking he's a valet, and he does what I think everyone would do: takes that fucking car and just wrecks it.
Yeah,
it's like, fuck you.
Look, don't ever do that to me. Absolutely. But he was nicer.
He was nicer. I'd have driven it into the fucking
river.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, we're good. And then just throwing him the keys. Just pick it up later. It's fine.
Right. 3 hours later. You know what? Worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably get arrested for it, but whatever.
Bond discovered that. So he goes to the Bahamas. He does some investigating. Finds a very nice looking Aston Martin, and is like, "Who's that guy in that Aston Martin?" And he finds out that the middleman is Demetrios, who you spoke of earlier. Demetrios works for Le Chiffre and is hired to find someone who could carry out all of his tasks. Eventually, Bond meets Demetrios and plays a little poker with him. I feel like I'm skipping some stuff.
No, you're not. Like I said, we're where we need to be. Like I said, I don't know what the reason that he was playing poker was Demetrius was. Like, I don't know if that was a purposeful decision or not.
Well, I feel like
maybe this is just to establish that Bond is very good at poker. Basically,
maybe to establish that he's good at poker, and the way that Bond plays poker later, and he tells Vesper, "Hey, I played him because I want to see the type of guy that he is."
Yeah,
right?
Play the man, not the cards.
Right, and I think that's what he's doing here. Well, part of the reason he's doing it here.
Well, Demetrius is the type of guy that hates to lose, and so basically, like Bond's destroying him at the poker table, and Demetrius stakes his car. Yeah, against Bond.
Mistake.
Which was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Nope.
Terrible idea.
Don't ever do that.
If it ever gets to that point, guys, like, just walk away. or you will be walking away.
Yeah.
It's a 67 Aston Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's play for it. No. Like, no. Because at the end of the day, all this money I lost, I still get to drive home in a 67 Aston Martin. I'm not trading this for anything. What they should have played key trade. Like, okay, that's cool. I'll take your Ford Festiva or whatever the hell it is.
I'll take your C-Max.
Is this a hybrid?
And again,
So
when
quiet.
Bond wins the car, like Demetrius, little underwhelming reaction that he just lost his
I would be
famous luxury car.
furious.
But as Bond's raking in his chief's like, oh, I need the valet ticket too.
Just like, oh, just twist the fucking knife. Like, Jesus Christ.
Like, what a prick, dude.
Like, fine.
And like the woman dealing, she's like, "No, sir, we don't do
Yeah,
that."
table stakes, and,
Yeah.
and Bond's like, "No, let him,
No.
let him. I could use a new car. I'm driving a Ford right now, lady. Come on, come on."
He uses that car to trick Demetrios's girlfriend or whatever.
His
into
wife.
getting-
That's his wife.
That's his wife.
Yeah.
His wife into getting into his wife. His wife's name
Yeah.
Solange.
I know. I just looked it up. I just thought that was funny. That's Beyonce's sister.
Yes.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. If you
Yeah,
knew.
I'm aware. So.
And
She
It's a fair
is.
question.
She.
That's, you know,
Yeah. Okay. Like, let's not get crazy. The chances of Brad knowing who Beyonce's sister is about this much. This woman is gorgeous.
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I was like, wow, dude. Because I had forgotten
Mm-hmm.
that she would, like, I mean, I remember him, like, stealing this dude's wife or whatever. But I was like, wow, she is really,
Oh,
really attractive.
between her and
Jesus.
Eva Green, is this probably the highest
this is
highest quality of attractive Bond women?
Yeah,
Quite
I would
some
imagine
time.
so.
yeah.
But the funny thing is, like, Eva Green, I think is very attractive. Not as attractive as this woman. I was just like, where's the other woman? Oh, right. She's not coming back. No, but I thought she was like, you know, is this the first movie that they start to do the sort of split Bond girl thing where it's like,
Oh no!
Is that-
no.
is
Yeah,
that-
that's
it's always been-
that is
it's
a that is a trope
trope.
of the Bond.
okay, I
franchise,
wasn't
so.
sure.
Main girl and then the one who dies.
Yeah, James Bond probably averages like 2.3 partners per movie, basically, throughout the Bond
Yeah,
franchise.
he's a hoe, guys.
Wow. That part is very true.
So they have a sexiful time together.
You would too if your husband was
Well,
Ray
because
Romano.
Demetrius has to run off to meet with Lashif to get him a new bomber.
Yeah.
So.
Some things aren't worth it.
So eventually, James Bond pumps this woman for information.
I see what you did there.
But actually, ironically, like they never get to having sex.
Yeah,
like he
yeah, no.
he bails
He
before
bails.
before it's time. So
You fool. Proving that James Bond is such a rookie in this movie. He hasn't quite gotten into the rhythm of his
He
character.
didn't realize that he could take advantage of all these women.
yeah.
Dude, that's the whole point of being this character. Hello? And shooting.
Bond finds out from her that Demetrios is going to Miami. So
She gives up information. Like,
Well, no, actually, technically, she didn't give up that information. She was making out with him while she was on the phone with Demetrius, and he overheard Demetrius say that he had to go to Miami. Basically,
you got to go to Miami? Okay. I'll be having sex with this man here.
go as long as you want.
and so Bond immediately leaves her and goes to Miami, and I say Miami in quotes because that is the least Miami-looking building that I've ever seen that they pull up to in this film. Like there is no way, shape, or form that is in Miami. And in fact, it's not Miami. It is in probably the most anti-Miami place that you can imagine, which is Prague.
That's hilarious.
So Bond follows him to Miami, and he wants to confront Demetrios after seeing him put a
Yeah, wow.
Right,
Okay.
say that building is not a Miami building.
No, it's not bright enough. It needs more like
more pastel.
yeah, more pastels and like hot pink lasers or whatever nonsense.
fucking pit bull needs to be on in the background for it to be Miami.
So they go to a Body Worlds exhibit. Have you guys ever seen Body Worlds?
I've seen images from it.
Okay,
It looks really
I've
cool.
actually been there. It's an interesting.
The one in Prague or
Well, no, they brought it to the Maryland or the Baltimore or the Maryland Science Center.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, we checked that. It's very wild because they actually use real real like corpses.
Yeah,
or real
they're-
cadavers. So
Yeah, they're Chinese
really?
prisoners.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're Chinese prisoners.
Oh really?
That's the talk, is that they've gotten all the bodies from Chinese prisons. They're just like, yoink, well, we just killed all these people, no big deal, let's put them in body
Oh,
works.
that's not very good. So
They're already
Yeah,
dead.
That's true. Yeah. So
Time to learn about science.
God damn, that's creepy.
Yeah.
All right. So he confronts Demetrios. He sees him put a bag away for someone else to pick up, and Bond eventually Demetrios makes him, and he tries to stab him, but Bond is like, "No, I'm stronger than you. I'm stronger than you. Quit stabbing yourself. Quit stabbing yourself. Quit stabbing yourself." So Bond goes to look for the bag, but it's gone. So this guy named Carlos has it, and Bond follows Carlos to Miami International Airport, where Carlos does like the Agent 47 thing of putting on the clothes of someone else. He put on the clothes of a security guard, and he slips into a secure area, and Bond follows him, and he figures out that ellipsis is the password to get into some building or whatever. And
Are we meant to believe that the parkour dude was going to go all the way here with this password?
yeah,
That seems
apparently.
odd to me, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he would look the part, right?
Right. Like, like who's that sweating, jumping dude? All right, well, slide him in the back.
Like, why does he have all those scars on his face? Like,
Seems pretty recognizable.
yeah. It's not very conspicuous, inconspicuous.
He's very conspicuous.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, James Bond is like he calls back, headquarters, and is like, put him on the phone. He's like, she's busy. He's like, no, motherfucker, put M on the phone. And eventually, M comes on the phone. He's like, and then James Bond comes back. He's like, I'll call you back.
Yeah, that happens twice, by the way. Like he calls her again because she basically informs him so what's happening is that an airline company is unveiling their newest like prototype jet, and Lashif means to destroy it to make their stock collapse. Basically, that's it. That's his grand plan because he has bet against them in the stock market. Yep. So as soon as Bond finds this out, he sees the terrorists running towards this hangar that the plane's house, and he's like, "I'll call you back again. I gotta go. I'm busy."
So Carlos sets up a distraction by setting off the emergency sprinkler system, causing everybody to go out and act all crazy or whatever. Carlos attaches an explosive charge to a refueling tanker, and he starts driving it towards the plane. Are we meant to believe that he's going to kamikaze this thing?
No, because remember, like later on, he like straps the seatbelt to the wheel.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
it
yeah,
doesn't
that's
turn,
right,
and
that's right.
he's going to die. He's not dying.
Yeah, I
he's
was
not
about to
dying
say,
for Lashif.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, it's by his phone that he can activate it with.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I mean, it's missing the bomb symbol like we've seen in what was the movie that we did recently? But
Oh God,
Still
I
does
can't
the job.
remember what that was. Yeah, it was literally like bomb, clink. Hold on while I download the bomb app from the Sony Ericsson app store.
Bond manages to leap on top of the tanker, and
it was Die Another Day. Fuck, that's what it was.
that's why you couldn't remember it. It's your brain trying to protect you, man.
Yeah, that's right.
So Bond jumps on top, and we have like a pretty cool fight scene of a guy driving this tanker and Bond trying to get in it, and the guy is just trying to do everything he can to get him off of it. Bond eventually gets into the cabin, to the cab, and they start fighting, all while being chased by the Miami Police Department, who has AR-15s on standby, just in the backseat of their cars.
Sure.
I mean, I guess
They were they wanted to stand their ground at the airport.
I mean, it's Florida that we're talking
Yeah,
about
I mean,
here, so
right.
to be fair.
I mean, rocket launchers are probably in the trunks, I would assume.
Right. I mean, you've seen Miami Vice. Like, Crockett and Tubbs have a veritable arsenal with them at all times, pretty much. So.
Submachine gun, no problem. They're only cocaine dealers.
Right.
Like,
so. During the fight, Carlos leaps off the truck, and Bond is barely able to stop the truck from running into the plane, but he eventually does. But the tanker is leaking all this flammable, liquid. And Carlos smiles because he pulls out the detonator and while Bond is being held by police, right? And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna blow your ass up." And then we cut to, and they do it very, very, they do it very cool in this scene, because during the fight you see a random shot of just James Bond
grabbing his belt, but you don't see anything else. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so here's Carlos. Carlos is like, "Ha, I got your ass now." And then he hits the detonate button, and the beeps get louder, and Carlos is like, "What? Huh?" And then all of a sudden he turns around and sees he's got the detonator, and then boom, he blows himself up. Meanwhile, James Bond gives the slightest of smiles.
I just watched a man blow himself up right in front of me.
This guy's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah.
It's like you get this license to kill, and all of a sudden it's like, "Hey, it's all good, man.
Yeah.
Here's my license.
Yeah, exactly.
Just got it. Hasn't expired yet."
Yeah.
Has no expiration date. I'm good.
Yeah, what if it did? Like, what if you had to re-up?
Like, hold on, guys.
Like, all right, hold on. I got to kill 2 more people, guys.
Yeah. You go to kill someone, and then your gun just stops working, and it's just like a flashing thing. It's like, no. Gonna have to go. Gotta talk to M. Gotta do your course.
Speaking of talking to M, Bond goes back to Nassau, and is it Nassau that he meets in M?
Yeah.
Goes back to talk to M. M basically delivers the plot, right? Like, this is what Lashif is trying to do.
And they killed your girl.
And we're going to put a tracking device inside you because, much like a puppy, we need to know where you are at all times, just in case. We also find out that, like you said, the chick that he was supposed to bang but didn't, Solange, was murdered.
So we skipped over it, so I didn't have a chance to mention it. We'll see if Brad and I were on the same wavelength. Earlier, when you first see Solange, this is the part I was talking about, the like weird colonial viewpoint. They show Solange riding
with the black kids running behind her on the horse.
She's literally on this beautiful white Italian woman on a stark white horse, riding horseback down a beach as 3 little native black kids are like, "Yay!" I was like, "Yo, how is this in the movie?" It served no purpose at all. Like, she just gets off the horse and they're just like, they go back, they're like, "We're still poor and hungry," and then they just go back. And it was just like, it was this really weird colonial sort of moment. Yeah. It was just strange. But then, like, whatever, she's really hot, so like, I'll allow some racism is okay. I would have been one of those black kids. I'd be like, "Hey, come back."
I mean, you're assuming those black kids were native to the Bahamas. They could have been on vacation. You never know. That looked like a pretty high-end beach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're
not going to let just a bunch of...
They were probably bringing lemonade.
And they're probably like, "Oh, look, a horse!" Like
sure.
kids would.
There was like a beautiful white woman who's the pinnacle of beauty. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Nah, man.
Yeah,
No, you know what? I am against this movie now. I'll spend the rest of my time. No, it was just it was just a weirdly funny scene. Those kids were not on vacation. Okay, no, they were not.
Yeah, this wasn't a Sandals. You know what I mean?
No,
they're not just gonna let anybody come in there.
I do also like how while they're looking at Solange's like dead body wrapped up in this hammock, she's like, "You gonna be all right?" And he's like, "Yeah,
no, good,
cool."
Yeah, got my rocks off. Yeah. I'm fine. Am I supposed to love these chicks or what, man? Like, that's not what I heard. Daniel Craig is he's bro dog. I used to call him Thug Bond. You know what? I'm going to change that. He's bro dog Bond. Like, that's what he is.
Fucking Rob Gronkowski of James Bond.
Nice. That chick dead? Yeah? Well, nice. Yeah, all right.
So,
did she know your name? No. Like, all right. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
His face is fucked up, by the way, in this scene.
It heals remarkably fast because
it's almost
2 days later they're on a train. And
it's almost as if he was standing next to a briefcase full of diamonds that exploded. God. It's a shout out to the last movie. That's why they did it, right?
What a terrible movie. So because of what Bond was, he was able to foil the plans in Miami. Lashif loses $101 million.
Yeah, like he knew down to the cent. He was pissed.
He was very pissed. And now he's a marked man because that kind of money goes missing and it's one person's responsibility. You got to die. Well, no, you got to pay that money back and then you got to die. So Lashif must find another way to earn the money back so his investors won't kill him. So much like a degenerate gambler, he decides, I'm going to win the money back.
No, he doubles down. Like he's like, oh, did I lose 100 million? Double down. 200 million.
To be fair, when you are a poker savant, and you also have plans to murder anyone that would be able to compete with you legitimately for this poker money, it's a decent plan for Lashif.
It's a very good plan from Lashif. I just find it incredibly amusing.
By the way, all degenerate gamblers think they're savants. Just so we're clear.
So Lashif sets up this high stakes poker match in Montenegro for 10 players.
You don't gamble, do you?
No.
Yeah, it's poker game. That's how I know. This high stakes poker match.
Well, I'm reading it directly from the thing.
They don't. These people who wrote that, they don't gamble either. Are you guys ready for a poker match? Yeah, really. Sure. Right after the baseball match. Yeah, we'll do that.
So Lashif sets up a high stakes poker contest in Montenegro for 10 players with an entry fee of $10 million each, plus a $5 million buyback should one of the players lose their money.
God,
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
M informs Bond of the poker game at the Casino Royale and agrees to let Bond continue the mission.
Reluctly, she doesn't want to let him go because he's been such an ass to this point. But he's the best Texas Hold'em player in MI6.
No one else knows how to play Texas Hold'em better than James Bond.
It's true.
There is nothing.
He won a car. Like you said to see it earlier.
I mean, that just makes sense. There is nothing funnier than the idea of we have to send James Bond, the most British person we can think of, to play Texas Hold'em in Montenegro.
So, I mean, obviously in the book it was Chemin de Fer that they played. This is
like
the
Baccarat?
Yes, very much similar to Baccarat. This is the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
For all you young bucks out there. Texas Hold'em was all the rage.
Oh my God!
At the time,
they televised it.
And they still do.
I was going to say, isn't that still a thing?
Oh, yeah, but this is at its apex of popularity.
Everyone
was
I knew was like, "Oh, I got to buy a poker set."
ESPN literally allowed the rights for the NHL, one of the big four sports in America, to get away from them because they're like, "We'll be okay. We got Texas Hold'em."
Right.
Wow. That is a true story.
We'll be fine.
Sir.
Don Cheadle's playing poker. Like
they should have just sent Ben Affleck. Isn't he really good? MI6 sends Batman to play. That's basically what they did.
So the British government puts up the money for Bond to enter, and they send along Vesper Lind, a Treasury representative, to monitor Bond and give it a go. No, what? Give it a go, no go. Should he lose all the money? That's very weird. Basically, they send Vesper Lind to monitor James Bond,
right? To make sure they're not flushing $15 million down the drain, basically.
Exactly. So
it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we get Vesper's entrance. And
this scene between them on the train.
It's the best scene in the movie.
It's the best really scene in the movie, and it's the smartest exchange of dialogue that James Bond has ever had with any of his female leads, and it's not even remotely close to anything else in the series.
Well, not only is it not remotely close, but there's nothing sexual about it. Mm-hmm. It's just one of the things I liked. Sort of, I would argue
nothing overtly sexual about it.
Right, overtly sexual. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're obviously flirting to some extent. But one of the things I really like about it is you have the sort of the mindless Bond girl who is just like. She's just a piece of ass, right? And then the second Bond girl is not only someone he cares about, but in this case, is his intellectual rival, if not superior, right? So he's able to do this, like, oh, let me figure out who you are, kind of thing. And she's like, okay, cool, let me figure out who you are, and just totally matches him. immediately, just off the cuff. And I thought that was cool.
And
So you're telling me it's a matter of probability and odds? I was worried there was some chance involved.
Well, any of you assume the play with the best hand wins.
So that will be what you call bluffing.
You've heard the term. Then you'll also know that in poker you never play your hand. You play the man across from you.
And you're good at reading people.
Yes, I am. Which is why I've been able to detect an undercurrent of sarcasm in your voice.
I'm now assured our money is in good hands.
You don't think this is a very good plan, do you?
So there is a plan. I got the impression we were risking millions of dollars and hundreds of lives on a game of luck. What else can you surmise, Mr. Bond?
About you, Miss Lind? Well, your beauty's a problem. You worry you won't be taken seriously.
Which one can say of any attractive woman with half a brain.
True, but this one overcompensates by wearing slightly masculine clothing, being more aggressive than her female colleagues, which gives her a somewhat prickly demeanor. And ironically enough, makes it less likely for her to be accepted and promoted by her male superiors, who mistake her insecurities for arrogance. Now, I'd have normally gone with only child, but, you see, by the way you ignored the quip about your parents, I'm gonna have to go with orphan.
All right. By the cut of your suit, you went to Oxford or wherever, and actually think human beings dress like that. But you wear it with such disdain. My guess is you didn't come from money, and your school friends never let you forget it. Which means you were at that school by the grace of someone else's charity, hence the chip on your shoulder. And since your first thought about me ran to orphan, that's what I'd say you are. Well, you are. I like this poker thing. And that makes perfect sense. Since MI6 looks for maladjusted young men, I give little thought to sacrificing others in order to protect Queen and country. You know, former SAS types with easy smiles and expensive watches. Rolex?
Amiga.
Beautiful. Now, having just met you, I wouldn't go as far as calling you a cold-hearted bastard.
No, of course not.
But it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine you think of women as disposable pleasures rather than meaningful pursuits. So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
Even accountants have imagination. How was your lamb?
Skewered. On sympathizers.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Good evening, Miss Lind.
yet he has an amazing line. Like basically after she like picks him apart like to a T.
Oh, definitely.
Basically, he's mildly impressed, basically, and so she has a she's like, "How is your lamb?" And he deadpans, "Skewered." One sympathizes.
That's a great line.
Yeah, it's the best scene in the movie, followed by one of the best gags in the movie. So they get to where they're going, and they are given their cover. Mm-hmm. They are posing as a married couple. James Bond's name is Arlington Beach, a professional
Alabaster Beach.
Alabaster
they
Beach.
They went with an even more British name
Right.
than Arlington.
and he tells Vesper that her name is Stephanie Broadchest, and it's just like
No, it's not. The fuck
Like
out
I
of
said,
my
that's
face.
like I said, that's not for the characters. That's for us, the
That's
audience,
just a-
as a wink nod, like you know.
And this is why I love this movie so much. This movie takes itself seriously, but is not afraid to have fun, especially have fun with the Bond tropes in a good way. We even get a ridiculous Bond girl name in the movie without it, without her name really being Stephanie Broadchest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because you can't take that woman seriously.
This is my smart and intelligent wife, Tits McGee. seems odd.
This is my wife, Pussy B. Yankin. Like, what the fuck? Like, that doesn't make any fucking, like...
I would like to think it's Pussy B.
Right.
B period. Yankton. Oh, that is unnecessary.
Upon arriving in Montenegro,
Right, and then he just throws the cover out when he gets there. Cause,
Right.
Well, no, because he he knows that Solange would have given him up. Basically, like she would have been tortured, and they would know his name already.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not gonna fucking do this charade. Like, I'm just gonna fucking and to his point, like as he tells Vesperlinda, she's fuming that he just like completely shits on this cover that was crafted for them. He's like, look, like Lashif's well connected. He knows who I am, but he's still playing me because he's desperate.
Yeah.
So and she's like, I don't really care. Like you're being a prick.
And
So.
he was like,
and she's like,
shut up, Stephanie Broadchest. Get in the room. Get out of here. How dare you?
So eventually they meet up with Renee Mathis.
Well, first we get to see his new
Aston
car,
Martin.
DBS.
Oh. Yes, his new Aston
My
Martin.
favorite James Bond car, aside from the DB5, probably.
This is a close second to the invisible car from Die Another Day.
God damn it.
No, but this DBS is fucking gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ, it's so nice. Going back to something you said, Micah, earlier, is this the best of the Craig movies as far as the balance between serious and sort of not taking itself serious?
Yes. The other Daniel Craig movie I like is Skyfall, but Skyfall is
Incredibly serious.
Too serious.
yeah.
I agree.
It's like to the point where it gets like part of it is just like kind of a downer.
Well, like Skyfall does like the Dalton jokes where they feel like almost forced in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Spectre has some good gags. in it.
I need to watch. I'm.
Like Spectre has the one where he's falling from the building that's collapsing and he happens to land just like on the couch and he's like, okay, and also has the scene where he's like driving down the alley and the slow old guy and like the Yugo is in front of him and he literally has to like push the guy's car along because he's in a high speed chase essentially. So I think Spectre strikes a good balance. This one is done, but their gags are more overt. This one is done a little bit more effortlessly.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
No, they really nailed the first outing for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like they really did.
Yeah, they did.
So we meet Mathis as you were getting to. We also get our Michael Wilson.
We get our Michael Wilson. Yeah, we get our Michael Wilson cameo. So they meet Renee Mathis. He's their contact, and he's describing. He's describing. What was he talking about that led to? Like you could do amazing things with Photoshop these days.
Yeah,
he set up the corrupt police chief.
That's
basically.
right. He set up corrupt Michael Wilson, and we cut to Vesper and James Bond getting ready.
Oh, before you get there, so I really like Mathis' character, Giancarlo Giannini, I think his name is.
Yes.
He's a really good character actor, and his character also led to a really good fake out for me later in the film because Mathis is in the Felix Leiter role, essentially, in this movie. So at that point, I'm like, there's probably not going to be Felix Leiter. This is the Felix Leiter. And also going into this film, I had no idea who Jeffrey Wright was.
Yeah.
So when that happened later, it completely caught me off guard. I didn't see Shaft, okay? I didn't see the
Really? That's what we're breaking
You didn't
this
see
down.
it? You were in it.
Yeah, dude. There's a guy who looks
There's a
just
guy
like
who looked just like you.
I don't watch my own work. Mike. You should know this.
That's how arrogant Brad is. Right. I would never. How gauche. Brad played a bodyguard in Shaft 2000.
So we cut to James Bond and Eva Vesper getting ready. James is like, "Hey, I want you to wear this dress," and she's like, "What? You don't tell me what to wear." And he's like, No. I just want you to come in behind me, have everybody look at you, and then you give me a kiss, and it'll throw everybody off because they'll be looking at your tits and not looking at their cards."
I respect you as a woman.
Right. And
Now be a piece of ass so I can make millions of dollars. Okay.
And much to your point of Vesper being James Bond's equal, she lays out a dinner jacket for him, and he's like, "I have a dinner jacket, Mom. I don't need one."
It's such a hilarious scene. This is fitted. This is tailored. How dare you?
Taylor, like, yeah, I sized you up when I saw you. Like, fine.
He puts it on. He's like, does look pretty good.
I know that you the first time you
that
saw
show was
this.
hilarious to
Also, like the first time, like he walks into frame, like in the full, like in the James Bond uniform, essentially.
Yeah.
Got that chill up your spine.
Yeah,
didn't
man.
you?
I was like, go ahead. That's him, man.
But it's funny because like you watch that and Eva Green's character, she's even watching him put on the suit, and she's just like, yeah, and like she's meant to be the audience in that moment. You're like, yeah, it's like I thought that was kind of cool.
Plus, it's.
I mean, well, besides that, and she's like, I totally want to fuck this guy, and I'm like, I'm enjoying the movie, but that's fine.
I mean, I'm just like watching James Bond become James Bond. Like physically, he's becoming James Bond, and it's like we're getting through some of the emotional stuff, and now we're getting to the classic James Bond look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah, they do really kind of slow roll.
yeah,
Like the character in parts.
yeah, it's like he's going through this adventure, getting all the pieces for him to become James Bond.
Again, this movie is a video game. Right?
Yeah,
Like, it is.
It's fucking
It's
Mega Man X.
Yeah, right. He's like,
You've received tuxedo.
I mean, and then soon it's like, you get martini. Ding. Yeah, like it is kind of funny.
You have lost all human emotions.
Like, question mark. Okay, you're a robot. But yeah, it is kind of interesting how they slow roll it. And to the point that we've been making earlier about like the connection between this and sort of like the Batman Begins thing, that's kind of how that character is done. Like you get the
you don't get Batsuit till halfway through the movie,
right? Like
so.
you're gonna like dark mask or maybe the ears, and then they kind of slow roll the things. And like you've received Batmobile, you know, like, and it's kind of like that with this, which is kind of an interesting way. I hadn't thought about that until you said it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Same thing with the car, right? Like, oh, he got the car now. Okay.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, right. Because you get sort of the car early, right? It's like, oh, I won this car, but that's not his car. Yeah. And I guess he took that car and then put it in a garage.
Into a garage somewhere where he wouldn't see it for a couple
for
more
two
years,
more movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's just kind of funny.
He turned his nose up. He's like, "Oh, it's a left seat, Aston Martin." Like, no,
How
no,
dare
thank you.
We'll see you later. But yeah, it is kind of piecemeal, and it's a super smart way to do an origin for such a classic character.
So here's the deal, right? Each poker player has all their money in a Swiss bank in escrow while they play. Each one has a password to keep the money secure. Now, Vesper has the account number, and James Bond has the account password. That's how they keep everything, kosher. And we're at the poker game now. And we're at the poker game.
This is the one part of the movie, the poker game takes place over the next 40 minutes, interdispersed with other scenes that move the plot along as well. This is where I think the movie does drag a little bit, and I know it's funny. It's funny you said the poker scenes were actually your favorite.
I love this stuff because I think it's interestingly directed.
I agree with you there. And the TV edit actually works well because they literally cut out the entire, when you think about it, unnecessary subplot of him getting poisoned during the film. Like they cut out and everything that happens after.
I don't think that's an unnecessary subplot at all. No, because when it happens to him, it solidifies in what happens to him right after he's poisoned, right? He's dying. It solidifies that he needed her to save him, which I thought was a pretty big point of the movie.
That's interesting. See, I get more from that scene that just shows that Lashif is willing to do anything it takes to get the money.
That part, that's true, right?
Yeah.
Like that point is true, but it's also like this idea because spoiler alert for 2006 movie,
right?
Like that whole idea that she trades his life for her own and all that other stuff is when he's being tortured later on, but also like she saves him twice, which is kind of a big deal for someone who is not the hero.
Well, but they cover that though in another scene. So in the scene where, and we're going to be going roundabout, I think, for this now.
Yeah.
In the scene where he gets bluffed by Lashif and he's out of the game, and she won't give him the buy-in money. In that scene, she's also saving his life because she furthers her part of the plot by not letting him get back in the game, which is going to help Lashif win. But by taking him out of the game, she's also protecting him as well.
Yeah, to not get
Right.
fucking murdered. So is spoiler alert, is whatever organization she's working for, is it that you have to save 3 lives like, instead of kill 2 people? Is that,
Well, no, I don't
that's how
think
she gets her triple
I don't
status?
think honestly. I think they don't care if he lives or dies. I think that she. Well, I guess he kind of has to live though in order to get the money. Well, later on he has to live, but they don't care. Like she's saving him because she's developing feelings.
Yeah,
for
she's
him.
in love with him.
And like I said, that's like Eva Green's so fucking good in this film. Like there's a scene later that
This is her best
that
work,
will
in
call
my opinion.
out that just like like when you view it through the knowledge of what happens later, you're just like, why is she so good in this scene? And like
This
Eva
is her
Green's-
best work.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Eva Green now has this sort of reputation, and you can kind of see it here too, like the dark eye makeup and the super pale skin, and she's like always evil and what have you. In this, she is so much more than that, which I'm like, could you go back to that? Because she's in like the 300 sequel nobody saw and all these other like bullshit movies. She's a very good actress, but she's somehow been pigeonholed into these kind of weird roles in these sequels or lesser movies than I think her acting capabilities require. So I don't know.
So I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna do this.
We can skip over the poker till the end, and we can just talk about the stuff that happens in between the poker. Basically, is probably the best way to go about it.
Can we talk about one very important thing in this scene? Fucking goddamn it, Tyrone from Snatch is sitting at the table. I love that guy, dude. I love that guy. He's one of my favorite people at the table. Not the ones not doing anything. Because every time I see him, I was like,
Well, he's also the most. He also has the best outrageous outfit at the table. Like Bond and Lashif and Felix are definitely the best dressed people.
Yeah,
but he's got the best like bizarre outfit of anyone.
Yeah, he looks like fucking Viscera at a fucking wedding reception. You know what I mean? Like,
wow. No one should bring that guy up ever.
you silly fart bastard.
Your gun says replica.
So
Which is why I made that joke.
Yeah.
so a lot of things are going on. At one point, Lashif demonstrates a tell where he touches his eye. James Bond picks up on that, which is why I think, James Bond is apparently like he's this master.
Right.
We've established that he's this master, like you can
Reader
he can
of people,
Yeah, he
basically,
can just
yeah.
read people. And at one point he calls for his signature drink to be made.
But he said it's not his signature drink because he's again James Bond's being an asshole, and he's purposely making the most ridiculous drink order that he possibly can just to unnerve Lashif, and it works perfectly because everyone else at the table is like, give me that too. And then Tyrone's like, give me that, but change this like sluts.
Well, no.
I'll take that. No fruit. Like,
Felix says, I'll take that with no fruit. But it's funny because, Lashif's response is like, yeah, are we going to play poker, guys? Like, can we stop fucking around? Like, go. Got people to kill. Come on.
Someone's in a hurry.
I love Jeffrey Wright in this role. He's so good. Is Jeffrey Wright? Does he came back?
He came back for the next film, yeah.
Yeah, but not since then.
Not since then.
Oh, he should be in the new one. He's great.
So they play for like 4 hours, right? Which I can't imagine.
You can't imagine that because you never, like you said, you don't really play poker, do you?
No.
You lose track of time when you're playing. Like you don't pay attention to how much time's passing.
I'd be so pissed. I'd lose 4 hours of losing money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it would be for me.
Yeah, no, thank you. That sounds horrible.
Bond places a tracking device in Lashif's asthma inhaler and goes to Vesper and says, "You want to do what to me? What? We're going back to the room? Yeah, we're going back to the room." So,
like the idea of like, you want to do what to me? Like, what? Calm down. Also, the whole idea of her wearing that dress, like you mentioned, it's like, oh, you're going to come in and distract all these people. Bond's the one who gets distracted. He's like,
because she comes in on the opposite side of the room.
He's like, oh,
just
shit.
to fuck with him. So.
And then, like, she's over at the bar, and he's just like staring, checking her out, and they're like, hey, Bond, it's your go to bet. And he's like, what? Huh? $100 million? I don't know. What's happening? He's all confused and shit. That's great.
Lashif is called back to his room by his girlfriend, whose name is Valenka. I didn't know.
I guess, sure. There's the Craig movies have more unnamed role characters than any other Bonds.
Yeah,
by far.
Yeah,
so
just like these,
like people that get a decent amount of screen time, but you have no idea what their name is.
Yeah, so. Like this woman almost fucking loses an appendage, and you're just like, who are you?
Solange, Beyonce.
When he goes back, when Lashif goes back to his room, he's confronted by Obano, the African warlord, and his henchmen, and they're like, "Where's my money?" Like, well, look, I'll get it. I'm trying to get it, and Obano is like, normally I would take a hand for this, but you needed to play poker, so I'm gonna take your girl's hand. And then she's like, "Oh shit!" And then Lashif is just like,
"Motherfuckers are crazy."
And Lashif is just sitting there like, "You ain't taking my hand now." And Obano goes to do it, and he stops short, right? And he's just like, "Damn, not even one word of protest, girl. You might want to get a new boyfriend."
Yeah, that's fucked up, dude. That's fucked up.
It's also,
I mean, she was like, he ain't wrong.
This is another thing that's very different about this movie is that Lashif is not a villain who's like this imposing force.
No,
like he is acted upon more than any Bond villain come before him because he's not in control of his own agency.
His motivations are out of complete desperation and preservation of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and you usually don't see that in a villain, and it works because he's still a formidable foe. Like this is how you play a smart villain, right? Like whenever I read Fantastic Four comic books, right? The two smartest people in that world are Dr. Doom and Reed Richards. But it always resorts to them having a fist fight.
Right, that doesn't make sense.
Like fucking geniuses don't fight, guys. Like they just don't. Like this is how and Lashif is he's like a chicken shit heel.
Right.
And it's God, I love this movie. I love this movie.
And
it's really good.
And again, it's funny because like I said, he's not bent on world domination. He's not bent. He just wants to be rich.
He just wants to be
and he'll
paid,
fuck over. He'll kill people and let people lower than his stature die just to maintain his wealth. Like that's his ability. I mean, he's a Republican basically. Like that's what he is.
I mean, I would argue. I mean, one, that is correct. I would argue I am no better than Lashif. Like, given his resources and access, I am no better. Yeah, I would gladly let people die who are below my station. What do I care? They're poor. Please, just get that money. I would definitely poison a guy to win $100 million. Yes. Yes. I know 100% for sure. Like, I don't like this guy. Yeah, put some in his ring. Let's move on. Making these complicated drinks and just get something normal, you asshole.
So,
this Texas Hold'em.
So Bond and Vesper, they head back to their hotel room, but they hear Lashif's girlfriend, screaming.
Good thing James Bond stored a gun with silencer at the front desk.
I believe you have a package for me.
This envelope has something that feels very gun-shaped in it. It's very strange.
Shut up. Shut your mouth.
So they eventually Obano comes out and Bond and Vesper, they start making out to try and conceal themselves. But Obano's like, nah, I don't believe you. And then,
the guy, his husband sees the earpiece and hears the heavy breathing from Lashif's girlfriend inside their apartment, basically.
That's right.
Because he has the worst earpiece in the world, basically, that projects outward, apparently.
Yeah. Hey, what's that noise? I bet those guys are spies.
Fucking earpieces are fucking amplified.
He had it on backwards. That was the problem.
Can hack into his boss's top secret military grade computer.
But he's an idiot.
Can't put an earpiece in.
He's a fucking moron. That's hilarious.
So a fight breaks out, between James Bond and Obano and his henchmen, and Vesper's there. And
Well, the henchman's taken care of in about 0.3 seconds. Like, James Bond throws him over the rail, and he falls all the way down.
That guy is hurt.
And they're in
Badly.
they're in this stairwell, and Vesper is looking at James Bond just like brutally murder this guy.
Right. Well, so the stairwell fight, they had tricky. They had the fight scripted. That was no problem. They didn't know how to film it, so they actually built a stairwell with rubber walls that they could easily remove any section of wall, no problem, just to get a camera in there to film any angles that they needed to. So
that's very cool. Very cool. Vesper is shaken because this is probably the first time Vesper has seen someone murder someone.
Right, because she's just she
works for the Treasury
basically.
Department. Yeah, right. That'd be like my wife used to work for the Treasury Department. That would be like my wife witnessing me murder someone. It's not really going to sit well. You know what I mean?
I don't feel good about myself. What's the problem? You work for the Treasury Department. Jesus. You deal with money all day. Surely that's not different than me holding a guy down and choking the life out of him. And throwing a guy up a staircase. It's fine. Complaining.
He tells Vesper to go back to the hotel room where she sits and does the "I've just been molested" cry in a shower. And it's like she is very shaken up.
This is a weird... It's not weird, right? Like, the reaction is actually totally human. I just saw him kill two people.
One of the most realistic things in this fucking movie.
Right. But it is... When I say weird, it is a weirdly realistic moment where you're just like, ooh, James Bond's murders do mean something to people. Like, I thought we were just shooting people for fun. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, they really like, stop. No, human lives have been extinguished, and this hurts people emotionally. And you're like, okay, we'll just sit in the shower and cry for a bit, and now back to the game. Like, but it is a weirdly serious moment. I actually really appreciate it because, yeah, she would be shaken up about it. Mm-hmm. Dude, he brutally killed that guy. And she was also a part of it too, right? Like it wasn't that she knocks the gun.
She knocks the gun out of his hands.
So she was like, "Hey, let me help you."
Like I assisted in this man's death.
Yeah, like, and I'm just a fucking analyst. So
apparently, according to IMDb, the shower scene, Vesper was supposed to be wearing her underwear, and Daniel Craig was like, "Come on, guys! Like, I know you just want to see her in a fucking wet underwear,
and I do too.
But there's no reason why this character should take her clothes off and then go into the shower."
Now, see, according to the
she's mentally fucked up.
According to the cinematographer, he said that they thought better of this because they're like, "What would a human being do?" And they're like, "Oh, a human being would probably just like." Not even realize that they're still wearing clothes.
Exactly.
Basically, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, come on, dude. In the underwear, you'd be like, well, this is a real undercut for this emotional moment. Look how hot her ass looks now. Like, wow. All right. But there's also, like, a weird, like, finger thing that happens where I was just like, that's a little weird. Like, I didn't need that.
I mean, okay, so he's trying to comfort her in any way.
What is he, a monkey? Form. Like, I gotta pick bugs out of your
But he's
back.
also trying to mack on her a little bit. Like
but that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying.
He's trying to help her, but he's trying to get in as well.
Right. He's like, are you feeling okay? I mean, I want to fuck later. So, like, I want to, like, see this. Like, it was a little weird.
Is this turning you on, or?
Like, no? All right, we'll just sit in the shower then, I guess. I mean, because I could fuck the hurt out of you later, if, you know. I mean, we have a couple of hours before the next game. Like, it was just I was like, because, like, I feel like Daniel Craig was like, guys, come on, the underwear, that's a little weird. And then he was like, give me your hand. Like, oh, come on, dude, that's strange. Like, that was just weird. Like, it made me uncomfortable. Like, I gotta tell you, I was like, all right.
Oh God.
I hope that was an ad lib. Like, I really do. And she was just like, stop doing that.
Bond had called Mathis to get rid of the bodies, and the next day we see the result of that.
Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, they framed a guy. Just some poor schmo.
It was one of the
chief
dudes. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. I like to think that it was just a random dude.
No, they should have framed the guy who gave him the keys earlier. Like, yeah, fuck.
Oh you. Yeah. He could have. That guy could have been the J.W. Pepper of this fucking series.
God damn it, James Bond! I'll be back.
So they continue the poker game, And Bond loses all his money to Lashif after misreading a bluff.
Is it that Lashif realizes that he sees the
Yes,
tell,
yeah,
and then he
Lashif-
plays into
Well,
the...
no. So, and again, you come to find out later that he was tipped off that Bond, because like as soon as Bond notices the tell earlier in the film, he goes over to Mathis and Vesper and is like, "I noticed his tell,"
Yeah,
and
he's
then
got a tell.
I'm assuming that that Vesper informs Lashif that. And so he uses that to his advantage to bluff Bond into thinking that he had a weak hand, and that to get Bond to bet recklessly, which he absolutely does. So.
Which he absolutely does.
Yep.
all in. Thanks, I'll take all of it now.
Vesper's like, no, I'm not going to give you the money back. Her reason is that she's afraid he's going to lose it. So Bond goes full tilt.
Right. No, very, very good. Very good.
And he grabs a knife and is ready to fucking kill Lashif right there.
Okay, this scene I found to be hilarious. It's like, when you can't win with your words,
Yeah.
murder him. Like, yo, you're supposed to be like a cool, slick.
Well,
spy.
and
Like,
to be
nah,
frank,
fuck
too,
that.
like Bond in this scene, like he's got to know that if he does this, he's going to die. Like he's like, this is the only play that I have left.
Funny game, right? Sorry, I should have introduced myself, seeing as we're related. Felix Leiter, a brother from Langley. You should have a little faith. You keep your head about you, I think you have him.
Had. Excuse me.
You're not buying in?
No.
Listen, I'm bleeding chips. I'm not gonna last much longer. You have a better chance, I'll stake you. I'm saying I'll give you the money to keep going. Just one thing, if you pull it off, the CIA bring him in.
And what about the winnings?
Does it look like we need the money?
And I've got to go do it. I of course love the humorous moment at the beginning of this where he goes to the bar and he's like, "Give me a drink," and what does the bartender say? I can't remember. Oh, that's right. He's like, "Give me a martini." He's like, "Do you want to shake it or start? Does it look like I give it?"
That will only become important later.
Yes.
So Bond is stalking Lashif, and all
With
of a
a
sudden,
steak knife.
Yeah, with a
That's
steak
the only
knife.
weapon that
Yo,
he has.
he was
is a
about to
steak knife.
straight up murder him, dude.
like, that's a fucking prison death, James Bond. Like, what the fuck? And
Bond has lost it.
all of a sudden, Jeffrey Wright comes out, and he's like, "Hey, brother, it's me, your brother from the CIA." He's like, I'll make a deal with you, right?
He literally does introduce himself as, he's like, "I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself seeing as we're related." He's like, "Felix Leiter,
Right.
brother from Langley."
It's pretty great.
And then
And
James
then,
Bond
and then
is like,
in that moment, Brad is in the theater.
he's
I've
like-
got to check out this Shaft 2000 movie after this.
and fucking James Bond is like, "Brother from Langley. I mean, I know you're black, but like,
Is that how you people
are
talk?
you my partner, or are you just like saying that you are a brother from Langley?"
Both.
So
The answer is yes.
Felix is like, "Hey, I see you. Look,
Felix is written to be the most British interpretation of American in
Yeah.
the history of mankind.
yeah," because he's just like, "Look, bro, I'm inept at this fucking cool shit, but I got money, and I got money. I'm
He's
bleeding
like,
money."
He's
Yeah,
like,
I'm bleeding chips.
and he's like, "You're not buying back in?" And Bond's like, "No, I don't want to buy back in." He's like, "Cool, I'll give you the money. You let us have Lashif
You just, look,
when he loses."
that is such an American thing, too.
yeah,
Just
and then
throw
again,
money at
and
a
then
problem.
again, and again, the best scene. And Bond's like, "What about the winnings?" And Ledger's like, "Does it look like we need the money?"
We are swimming in cash.
Gosh, this is America, baby. Does it look like we need the money? Come on, man. Look at these threads. Does it look like we need the money?
Like, what
We
is this,
finance your British spy movie.
Hello, $150 million? Like that's like 1/100% of our defense budget. We good.
Yeah.
We good.
But this will go towards terrorism. I mean, one could argue, I guess.
So Bond is back, and Lashif is like, "God damn it!" And someone brings Bond orders the drink, and the drink comes to him. He takes some of it, and it turns out that Lashif's girlfriend.
Yeah, you see Lashif's girlfriend pour something into it.
Yeah, Lashif's girlfriend poisons him, and I forget what she poisoned him with, but the effects are your resting heart rate raises to like 120 beats per minute.
No, it was like 136.
Yeah,
his heart would just explode.
Right, and wow, so he's like he's out of it, and he's trying to recoup, and he has to leave. And the fucking he's in visual distress, and the guy dealing the cards is like, but it's your buy-in, sir. Like, you're the big blind. You gotta look, just fucking take it, man. I gotta hit the John. Jesus Christ. So he makes it to his car where he has a defibrillator.
Again, the cinematography perfect, because like I said, they go with this like fucking Dutch camera angle, and like they haze into the lens, like while he's trying, like he runs into a bathroom and pours an entire shaker of salt into a glass of water just he can try and throw up the poison real quick, like because he knows something's fucked up. But he's like walking around, he's drunk as shit basically in the parking lot, almost getting hit by cars. Very, very cool stuff.
Very cool stuff. He has a defibrillator in his glove compartment. Lucky for him.
Yeah, it's one of the few gadgets in this movie. So.
What a terribly convenient thing to have in your car.
Right. That he couldn't get to work properly.
Yeah.
And Vesper, he's on the phone.
Life-saving technique, but the electronic power, very easy to disconnect for some reason.
Yeah. It's like you didn't crimp the cord. Like when you made the thing, you didn't crimp the wire into the socket. Like
you don't have the time. For some reason.
But he passes out because he can't get the defibrillator to work.
This was actually, I remember seeing this in theater. This was actually a really distressing scene. I was like, I think James Bond might die.
It was pretty tense, and again, I think it goes back to the way it was shot. All of a sudden, Vesper comes out and saves his life. We cut back to the game, and Felix is just like, whatever, I'm all in with my one chip. And Bond comes back, and
Lashif's beside himself at this point.
Yeah,
he's like, what the fuck do I have to do to get this guy out of here?
Lashif is just fucking pissed, and then but he keeps it in, right? And he's like, I see you changed your shirt. It's not too much for you, is it? And Bond is like, well, that last hand nearly killed me. Like, yeah. Go ahead, James Bond. That's right, James Bond.
That's a very Sean Connery kind of line to me.
Yeah, man.
Oh, he gets him with one earlier too when he comes back from another absence, and he's like, what's the matter? He's like, you feeling the pressure? He's like, no. He's like, I wouldn't say that I'm in too much trouble until I start weeping blood.
Dad. Do you know anyone with that issue?
Oh man. See, if this was that other movie, fucking Tyrone would have a fucking quip.
Yeah. Hey, I'm African. Like, all right.
Right. Grimace. Like, that's my quip. Grimace. Like, what? That's a quip on you. Never mind. So the fucking poker match, which has lasted forever.
Well, we finally gotten down to the last hand. Now, the nerd in me is not sure why everyone at the table has to go all in this hand, because someone is going to have more, unless Bond and Lashif have the exact same amount of chips. Both of them would not have to go all in. Obviously, it's just done for the drama of the scene.
Right.
But like that always bothers me whenever I see that. I'm like, somebody doesn't have to put all their chips in the middle of the table.
Yeah,
guys.
someone can just fold. Guys.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, nope, that's fine.
Or even if Bond has the most chips and he wants to call a sheep to get him out of the game, Bond only has to match his bet. Like, he does not have to, like, there's no sense in raising him because you're raising him for money that he doesn't have.
Right.
Also, this is how I know I am of regular status. I did not realize that in gambling, that when you get to a certain point, they just give you like these credit card things. Like, I'm on the chip side. Like, I don't even go any place that has those, and they're just like, these are $25,000. I was like, wow, that is.
Oh no, it's $500,000 and $1 million. Like, each of those like little cards is $500,000 and $1 million basically. Which becomes very funny when we get to the end of the scene, a particular thing that I'll point out. So
all in.
I find it amusing that for the dullards in the theater, Renee Mathis is narrating what is going on.
You get this in every. You get like I also really like the 1993 film Maverick, and they do the same exact thing in the last scene of the poker game, where you have James Garner's character basically giving play-by-play for the rubes that don't understand what's going on in poker. So
that's funny.
So it's time for everyone to show their cards, right? Asian guy goes first, and he has a pretty good hand. But then Tyrone goes next, and like he has a better hand. He has like a full house. And then Lashif goes, and he has a higher full house.
Yes, and Lashif does go on because again, as they established earlier in the film, like Lashif sees the cards on the table that are the public cards, and he's like, "All right, there's 2 aces, but I've got one of the aces in my hand. It's a 2, 4, 2. Was it a 4, 6, and 8 of spades?" He's like, the chances that this guy has the 3 and the 7, which is the only hand that can beat me, is like 0.034%. He's like, I'm good to go all in here.
Right. And fucking Bond comes up, and he's got a straight flush.
4s, 8s.
And so Bond wins.
And again, I like Mads Mikkelsen here, who just like it's the most subtle thing in the entire world, but when they cut to him seeing it, like you just see his face over the course of 5 seconds, like, what the fuck?
Like this guy's like, you see him break basically. He's like, you know what? I just thought of a really good way to get that code from there in these 5 seconds.
Yeah, he's just like.
So, in order to celebrate, Bond and Vesper go to dinner.
That fucking 5 seconds. That shit is hilarious. And like his head slowly comes out like, mother. Like he sees it and just has like a total realization of what's happening. Like, ah. Matt Mikkelsen might be one of the greatest villain actors working right now.
Yeah.
Like, he absolutely is. He can never be a hero in a movie, though. Like, he's not believable.
No.
He always has to be a bad guy. He's got a villain face.
Yeah, he does have a villain face. He's got a villain voice too.
Yeah, he does.
Like but like a nice calm.
Well,
you know.
he has that like it's a uniquely generic European voice. Like, where are you from? Over there. Like, you just don't know. Like. German?
My favorite part about the scene though is that after Lashif leaves the table and everyone's applauding, like, oh, like Bond, like, can't believe you won with a straight flush, that's crazy. Bond slides the dealer a $500,000 card, and the dealer no-sells it like it happens all the time.
Yeah,
he's like he kicks over to him, he's like, thank you very much, and just goes about. It's like, dude, just gave you $500,000.
I'd be like, dude, woo! I'm so glad I cheated for. Let's just keep that.
Like, that is the most professional dealer that you've ever seen in your
Thank
entire
you very
life.
much. I'll just keep this.
I'd have wild out.
I can afford to live in Montenegro now. I don't have to fucking travel by boat from a shittier town. Who can afford to live there? It's so expensive.
At dinner, Vesper receives a call from Mathis, and she's like, "Oh, I gotta roll out for a second." And Bond is like, "Wait a minute, Mathis," and then he runs out to get her, and he sees her being kidnapped and thrown into a car by Lashif's goons. So Bond races after them in his Aston Martin. And while he's driving on this winding road that has no light, and the way the scene is shot, like it's really cool. It's really surprising. They all of a sudden you see Vesper tied up in the middle of the road, and it's like, oh shit! Like, and he has to swerve out of the way, and the car has to it does like 8 barrel rolls.
7 actually. It was a world record.
Oh damn!
When they
really?
did it, yeah. And it was funny because watching them like talk about shooting this. So they tried a bunch of different cars, and every time they tried a car, they had this little 8-inch ramp that they would drive it on, and they drive it on the ramp, and the driver would turn the wheel real quick, and the car would roll, and they're like, all right, cool, there's no problem. So then they get the Aston Martins, and every time they try with the Aston Martin, it would just flatten out. And
Yeah,
just
because the
go into a side circle with
wheelbase is too fucking big.
So they installed a piston that when the car hits the ramp, this piston slams out of the bottom of the car and flips the car over. They weren't expecting it to roll 7 times.
If I was Aston Martin, I would say, hey, give us that footage of all your failed attempts at trying to topple our car.
Yeah, Aston Martin can't flip us. It's like, it's like the little what was it, the Levi commercials, like you can't bust them jeans, right? Like, yeah, I would just play it up. Why not?
So, Bond is also kidnapped. Lashif's girlfriend is wearing something fucking ridiculous. Like she's about to go to an S&M party. And
Rewind.
we it just like the back is just like, wait, what the hell is that? Like just go backless.
Wow, yeah, good lord. I guess almost having. She looks familiar.
She's in Banshee. She's like the female lead in the Cinemax show Banshee.
I've never seen that.
Yep.
I think she's probably been in something else I've seen too. But yeah, I guess being scared that you can get your arm cut off allows you to go live your best life. You're like, no, fuck this. I've been dressing way too modest for too long. I almost had one arm last night, so fuck this. Let's just go for it.
So Lashif is they take Bond to this like warehouse.
The shipyard, basically.
Yeah.
They're in a boat, so.
And
so there were two things from the book that the Broccoli's absolutely mandated had to be in the script. There was the line at the end, "Job's done, bitch is dead," which is the last line in the novel, and then there was this scene. They had to have the torture.
This scene was in the book.
A very close. So in the book, he's being beaten with like a carpet beater. So like back in the day, they used to have these like metal things that you'd beat dirt out of a carpet with, basically, and that was what they used to attack him in the novel. Obviously, they used a little bit more of a practical method here, the bull rope, essentially.
But was it the same type of torture?
Yes.
Yo,
absolutely.
I love how they were like, no, we have to have this.
Well, because the last line and that scene are the two like lasting things that everyone that's read the book remembers from it.
Yo, well, I certainly will never, ever, ever forget this scene ever in my life. So the scene, they bring in, they have a chair and they cut out the bottom of the chair.
It's like a wicker chair. Right?
Yeah, like a wicker chair. So, and then they take James Bond, who has been stripped naked, and they sit him on the chair. So essentially, his cock and balls are just hanging low underneath the chair. And Lashif takes a bullwhip, and he proceeds to whack James Bond's balls with it.
You've taken good care of your buddy. Such a waste. You know, I never understood all these elaborate tortures. It's the simplest thing to cause more pain than a man can possibly endure. And of course, it's not only the immediate agony, but the knowledge that if you do not yield soon enough, there will be little left to identify you as a man. The only question remains. Will you yield in time? I want the money. Miss Lynn will give me the account number, if she hasn't already. So all I need from you is the password. The password, please. I've got a little itch. Down there. Would you mind? No! To the right! To the right! To the right! You are a funny man, Mr. Bond. Ah! Yeah! Ah! Ah! Yes! 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 Now the whole world's gonna know that you died scratching my balls. Well, I died. I died? Yes. Because no matter what you do, I'm not going to give you the password, which means your clients are going to hunt you down and cut you into little pieces of meat while you're still breathing. Because if you kill me, there'll be nowhere else to hide. But you are so wrong! Because even after I slaughtered you and your little girlfriend, your people would still welcome me with open arms. Because they need what I know.
And I mean, when I saw this in the theater, I damn near screamed. I couldn't, like...
I watched it again today, and I've seen this movie before, and I was just like, oh!
And they did all of the close and mid shots for this scene in one take. Because they wanted to have everyone, like, they had the emotion for the scene going. They didn't want to lose any of that. So they did the best they could.
Yeah, because if you did
the whole scene done in one shot.
If you did it in another take, it would be a totally different set of emotions from Daniel Craig, the man. Not fucking Daniel Craig as James Bond. Like, no, we're not fucking doing this.
I'd like to think that they legitimately hit him in the balls.
Like the mere thought of this.
Like,
no.
Yeah, just have Matt Mickelson lie, and like, it's real, it's totally real.
So he's,
or the end is like actually soft and it's like a pillow as it is.
Well, and again, like James Bond, like even though it's hilarious because as the scene plays out, like even though he's the one in the helpless position, he still taunts the shit out of Lashif because he's like, I know I still have the upper hand, and Lashif's like, actually you don't, because even if I fucking murder you, like your government would still take me in a heartbeat because of what I know and who I know, and the realization sets in on Bond, and then he's like, oh shit, I'm just a piece in the machine,
right?
Basically,
Bond,
with a broken piece.
Bond, ever defiant, tells the chief that he's got a little itch down there, and he says, "Would you mind?" And the chief is like, "You fucking smug ass son of a bitch. You know what? I don't mind." And then he proceeds to fucking whack him, right? He's like, "Ah!" And he's like, "Yeah, right there, yeah."
To the right a little bit.
Right, to the right. And then he's like, now the whole world's going to know that you died scratching my balls. Like, God. Yo. Again. Come on, Daniel Craig.
I like this scene, man.
Now,
this scene is brutal.
Again.
Now I'm giving that code up. Whatever.
Can you imagine any other James Bond in this situation?
Oh, no. Roger Moore. Again, Roger Moore. The only one that you could see, maybe Connery. You could see in that chair, possibly.
I don't even think I could
not
see
reacting
him.
The same way.
Oh, certainly
mind
not.
you.
Yeah,
but,
no.
but you could see. But he could be in the scene.
He would just be like.
And Dalton could probably be in.
I think Dalton could be in this scene.
No. Well, yeah, he could be in this scene. He'd be fucking Mads Mikkelsen because he's a lunatic. I can see. We were doing it for real. No, like I can see Timothy Dalton torturing one of the villains in his movie in this exact way.
Oh shit!
With his 5 o'clock shadow and his angry villainous Bond.
So Mr. White, the broker from the beginning of the movie, comes in, and Lashifra's like, "Yo, I'm about to get the money right now. What you think I'm doing right now? I'm about to get the money right out of this guy's balls, right? Because he's about to fucking cut his balls off because he's like he's fed up." And
like I'm about to use this guy as a pinata. The money's right inside.
And Mr. White is like, money isn't as important to our organization as knowing who to trust, and he fucking shoots the chief right in the head.
Yep. And again, that's it played out in the novel in almost the same fashion, basically. Because in the novel, it's a agent from Smersh who comes in because Lashif's in the same situation where he gambled away the Russians' money essentially, and he's trying desperately to win it back. And the Smersh guy comes in, kills Lashif, and he doesn't kill Bond because it's not part of his mission. But he knows Bond is an agent, so he brands Bond with I can't remember what it says, but it basically brands him as a secret agent that Bond would later have to get plastic surgery to fix. So.
Fucking brand him like a runaway slave?
Pretty much.
God
yes.
damn.
I'm going to brand this right on your balls. They're already exposed.
Bond wakes up in a hospital bed. He talks to Mathis, whom he believes was responsible for his and Vesper's capture by Lashif. And a couple of MI6 agents come in, they tase Mathis, and they take him away. Vesper visits Bond,
and this is the scene that I'm talking about, where she's with him, and then all of a sudden, the Swiss banker Auf Wiedersehen comes up, and he's like, I need to get he's like, you guys got to put in your codes, and so after the codes get put in, she sits next to Bond, and you see, like, as Bond's like talking to the Swiss banker amicably, she's sitting next to him, and she like has her head buried in her hands because like the realization of what she's done has just hit her, basically. Like, she knows at this point that the betrayal is set, you know what I mean? Like she knows she's going to turn on this guy that she legitimately probably loves at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But she also knows that she still has this other boyfriend that is, that she's doing this for, and like just to see her, the conflicting emotions in her is a cool moment. Like I said, especially if you know later in the film what's coming. So
yeah, like it's and you don't notice it because your eye isn't
on
trained.
her because
Right.
she's not the focal point of the scene at that point. Like this is it right here where she's like, oh god damn it.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah,
damn, this is good, man.
Yeah, because I didn't realize it.
So they profess their love for one another, and
Stripped me of my armor.
and Bond is like
very Shakespearean almost. The way
Yeah.
he's talking to her is very, very un-Bond like for sure.
yeah.
He's growing as a person.
I guess.
It'll happen
by
when you get-
growing as a person, he's like, let me throw out some stuff that I heard back in like English lit back in 10th grade or something. That's the only stuff I remember.
Right, like whatever it takes to get chicks hot.
Have you seen my loft? I've got like a sofa and like a fucking cable spool as a coffee table.
Whatever gets you chicks hot, man. Chicks like Bill Shakespeare or what? Nice.
Bond pens a letter of resignation, effective immediately, and they set sail for Venice, where Vesper says she'll get the money and Bond will get the supplies for the trip.
Venice, by the way, this is like the fourth Bond film that has Venice as a setting.
Not surprising.
At some point,
It's
yeah.
such a unique locale.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like there's water everywhere. It's different. It's Italy, so
I honestly like, not counting London, of course, but that and Jamaica are like the two most used like Bond settings, and they're both in this film.
Yeah.
Or no,
Really?
Jamaica's not in this film.
Jamaica's
actually. I'm
not,
sorry.
but the islands.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Caribbean. It's all the same down there.
It's all Club Med.
So Vesper says she's got to go to the bank, and she rolls out. M calls James Bond about his resignation. It's like, we'll talk about that later. When are you going to transfer that money, bro? Like, you sitting on that, man. And James Bond is like, okay, I thought you got it. It's like, no, we didn't get it. I'll get it for you. And then he's like, fuck, like she turned on me. She dicked me over, man.
Well, she leaves her phone, and he sees a message from a guy named Gettler saying, meet in 10 minutes, basically.
Yeah.
So he knows what's happening. And he also calls the banker. He's like, where'd the money go? He's like, you put it in your Italian bank account. And he's like, you're withdrawing the funds right now. He's like, fuck. So it's like,
wait a minute.
Yeah, reality's setting in. So,
he gives chase. He finds Vesper and Gettler. A quick shootout happens. what happens to Vesper? Like, how did she get?
So what happens is
They end up in that building.
they get chased to this abandoned townhouse in Venice, and Bond, of course, comes in like bull in a china shop, like fucking blowing the flotillas under out of this thing, basically.
I'm fucking mad now.
Gettler puts her in a elevator, basically, to keep her where he can see her while they deal with Bond, essentially.
Right. Okay.
So this is a cool as shit set that they made, by the way. They built this set on a water tank, so they could submerge it 20 feet. They could tilt it 15 degrees in any direction they wanted to, just to get the effects that they have of this Venetian house slowly sinking into the canal, basically.
Slowly?
Yeah, well, very quickly sinking.
Done, gone. Let's just build a new one. No, it's like this is actually a really cool. It is actually a really cool set, and it's funny because inside it kind of reminds me of the sort of monk monastery in the beginning of Batman Begins. Like in design, it does.
During the shootout, James Bond is shooting out the flotation devices, and like you said, it's the whole thing is sinking, which is another thing that I had never seen in a movie before. You know?
No, this is definitely unique.
Yeah. Eventually, James Bond finds Vesper, and he tries to free her, but she...
Oh, we're not going to talk about how he kills Gettler with a nail gun through the eye? Fucking precision aiming a fucking nail gun at him?
Well, and he also got shot in the back
he did.
with said nail gun. And by the way, those aren't just like small little roofing nails. Those were like finishing nails, dude. They were long as fuck. Like, Jesus Christ.
Railroad spike in the
back.
basically.
Boom. Like, oh, all right. That's enough. Yeah, shooting someone with a nail gun, we haven't seen that since American Psycho. God bless. It's a good weapon.
So Vesper's trapped in this elevator. Bond is trying to get her out, and she just kind of pushes him away.
She locks herself in because at this point she can't bear to live with what she's had to do. Like I said, the money has been transferred, and he's now safe, essentially.
Yeah.
And so now she can't, like, she just wants to die, basically.
Yeah. He tries to resuscitate her, because she falls into the water, and he has fucking.
She goes crazy because like the elevator falls into the water.
Yeah.
And he dives in after her. And she basically like comes up to the door to feel his like hands for the last time, and then she backs all the way up and starts like inhaling water, basically.
Yeah, she was like
that's fucking crazy.
I'm done with this world. Like, wow, okay. Yeah. And then poor James Bond finally gets one of the doors open.
Yeah,
and he's just like, we're so close. No. Also, he can really hold his breath for a long time.
Yes, he can.
Like, dude, the elevator is sinking, and you're on it. Like.
I mean, I would imagine that if you were a 00 agent, you've probably got some like Navy SEAL-ish sort of like underwater breathing.
He's no Tom Cruise. Get out of here.
Like, did they invent the rebreather yet?
That's right.
Fucking...
He has 3 minutes that he can sit underwater to try to. Now he's also wasting his. If the science in Mission Impossible 6 or 5 is to be believed, he's also wasting all his oxygen by trying to rip this elevator door open. But,
seems like he has a lot of energy and is moving very quickly.
He swims her back up. He can't revive her. Mr. White, the broker, is seen leaving with a suitcase full of the money. Sitting on a sailboat, Bond talks to M, and she's like, yeah, Vesper had a boyfriend, and he was kidnapped, and, they were blackmailing her, and Bond is just like, yeah, fuck emotions. Mm-hmm. Like, the bitch is dead. Like, let's just fucking move on.
You received no heart.
right.
Congratulations, Mega Man.
So Bond examines Vesper's cell phone because he's like, she knew that I would find this thing, and he theorizes that he needs to go to Lake Como in northern Italy, and when he arrives at this palatial estate, we see Mr. White exit a car, and his phone rings, and he's like, who is this? and all of a sudden,
Destiny, motherfucker.
right, all of a sudden he's shot in the leg or something, on the arm or some shit, and
He shoots him in the leg.
he shoots him in the leg, and then all of a sudden, we see him walk up, and he pans up, and for the first time, Daniel Craig gets to say, "Bond." The name's Bond, James Bond, and then it's like, bam, that's it.
Yeah. You've acquired.
Well, like I said, that's the internet. You acquired code name.
Yeah, exactly. But like, and not only does he say it, but that's the shot, right?
Right,
Him
he's
holding
in the
machine gun.
fucking 3-piece suit,
Yep.
assault rifle in one hand, phone in the other, looking down on this dude like, I got you, bitch.
Like, and that to me was the moment when I saw this in theaters. I was like, "Wow, this is a really good movie. I'm really enjoying this." And I was like, "He's got to say fucking Bond, James Bond." And when he shoots the guy and he walks up and he says, "I was like, that's it. That for me, that was my gun."
And then immediately, for the first time in the film, right into the Bond theme
Yep.
for the end credits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wasn't
they
anywhere
don't
else
play
in the
the Bond
movie
theme
until
anywhere else until here.
until the very end, because that is, like
You've
you
ear-
said earlier,
you've earned
that's
your
the
theme.
moment when he becomes James Bond. So.
And what they should have done is they should have panned to like a news footage and been like with Van Jones, and like in that moment he became James Bond, and then credits. That's how I would have been.
Oh my god.
Guys, any final thoughts? I think this movie is it's one of my favorite, not just one of my favorite James Bond movies. It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is my favorite James Bond movie. Period.
and like we've talked about on the show. For me, it's probably number two.
Yeah.
Behind From Russia with Love. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we had no right to expect that this movie was going to be this good when we first watched it back in
Hell
2006.
no.
No,
Yeah.
I was expecting another Die Another Day with a new actor is what I was expecting.
And like I said, I was completely blown away by and super excited for what would be coming in the future. And then of course I would be slightly less excited once we got through
more excited.
once we got through the sequel to this movie. That is what it is. It's a direct sequel to this film.
This movie ends, and we are thrown into quite a quantum of solace, if you will. I don't even know what that means. And here's the thing: no one does. No one knows what it means. It's just a jumble of words that Daniel Craig finished writing.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Yeah, I mean, it was excellent. Like I said, I hope that you guys listening watch this either before or after we do this, because it's an amazing film, especially if you haven't seen it, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And make sure, if you're a premium member and you're listening to this, you can also, because this one is actually recorded on video, the three of us are in studio, so you can sit and watch it as well.
All right, excellent. Thank you, guys. We gotta trudge through next month, but
I'll be listening from afar.
Next month's film it's an interesting movie for sure.
I have not seen it since I saw it in theaters.
Well, I mean, but you know the complicated backstory, because you just alluded to it with the film, like the production issues with the film and everything else. So what could have been?
Yeah,
what could have been? Quantum
yeah,
Solace,
I mean,
so.
in fairness, it's not that movie's fault that it's
right.
It's just circumstances.
Yeah. So,
but it is also a film that is not that bad when you view it through a very specific and narrow lens.
So when you ignore all the bad
yes,
shit,
yes. If you look at it through a very narrow lens, there is something to be had. We'll talk about it next month.
There you go.
So
it's the only James Bond movie I can think of that has a direct connection to, or direct similarity to, a Sylvester Stallone movie. You guys are sure? I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Thank you, everyone. The Men with the Golden Tongues will return next month with Quantum of Solace.
The name's Bond. James Bond.